Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Hello, hello, hello. We are so excited that you're here with us tonight. I can't tell you, I am so happy. My name is Monica Jean-Pierre, and I am the Assistant Director of United Excel. And whoa. Do we have a night planned for you tonight? I know people are probably in their own homes, having watch parties, watching CNN, watching WSNBC, watching Fox, watching BT, watching TBN. I mean, I know that there's somebody plugged to a television somewhere, but we are so excited that you're here with us tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about United Excel. United Excel is a research-based organization designed to bring knowledge and awareness to the community through the 5 core areas of research, education, negotiation, confrontation, and resolution. The mission of United Excel is to educate, advocate, and empower the Baton Rouge community and surrounding areas through our MEDS model. That's morally, economically, domestically, and socially, while promoting peace and justice around the world. Our goal is to be a vehicle of hope to the community by examining systemic inequalities, questioning the practices, requiring change, and imagining the alternatives. We have spent so much time over the last few weeks. On Tuesday nights, we've had our districts represented with the Metro Council members who are running for office. And good luck to all of you all that are running on tonight. And we hope that, once everything is all over, we all galvanize together and get things done for our area. We've spoken to some wonderful people. We've spoken to our very own Pastor Mark Ellis as he gave us instruction on how to vote from a Christian perspective. We've spoken to educators. I mean, we have had it for you all on Tuesday nights leading up to tonight. Hashtag See You Tuesday. So I'm going to get out the way. So I would like to introduce to you our director, Dr. Christy Perry, as she leads the night. Stay with us tonight. We have some exciting things for you. So I'll see you soon, but we're so glad you came by.
Thank you,
Dr. Perry.
Thanks
You're so welcome.
For that introduction. Look, today is today. We've been working on this day. Today is Tuesday. This is voting day. We are, some of us are at the polls. We have our team here today. They are excited. They have been working hard, making sure that we have been informing you on making a conscious decisions at the poll. I have a couple of people at my house. We're having a little bit of a watch party. So some of the team members are here. We're going to go to the polling booths and kind of talk to a couple of people out there. We have a few of our college students that will be joining on with us tonight. A couple of our sisters are going to be joining on with us. So I am excited about our watch party tonight. And so we have with us tonight to start us off, Dr. Samuels from the Political Science at Southern University. He is joining in with us tonight, and he's going to have a conversation. We're just going to talk. He's chair of political science. This is his area. Look, I told him he's going to be our expert for tonight. We also have Donna Hamilton, who's on our United Excel team. She's going to be joining us tonight. Tania Williams, she's here as well. She's a part of our team. Hi, Tania. Hi, Donna. Hi, Dr. Samuel. All righty. So we're just going to take a few moments and just kind of chat about tonight. Ask Dr. Samuels some questions. And I want to start off, Dr. Samuels. Let's start with the local election. We put a lot of state into the political election. Oh, we also have James Jefferson. Come on, James. James is here with us tonight, and he's with our team. Hey, James.
Hello, how y'all doing tonight?
Good. Right. We put a lot of stake into the presidential election. Let's talk a little bit about our local election, Dr. Samuels. We have council people. We have the Senate. We have judges, and we also have our mayor. So let's talk a little bit about what's next state for the local election.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me, Dr. Perry, and it's good to be with all of you. You're right. This is a very busy ballot. Busy ballot. So, in addition to the presidential election, there are the congressional races, but we also have our we're gonna be electing a mayor president. A mayor president tonight. There's probably going to be a runoff. Mayor Sharon Winston Broome has 5 challengers, and so the question would be, can she get 50% plus 1 to avoid a runoff? We'll see. That's going to be tough. And also, all 12 of the Metro Council seats are up for election. In some of those seats, you got some people who are term limited, and so you're gonna have some new people and some of those seats. And we got a number of judgeship races that are up, and there are also several constitutional amendments on the ballot. And even a proposition about sports betting. And it's a local option. So depending on each parish has the option of deciding whether or not they want to legalize sports betting. By the way, the polls are still open. The polls do not close at 8 o'clock. And so, so for those people who have not voted yet, you still have a little less than 2 hours to do so. If you are in line by 8 o'clock, you will be allowed to vote. So that's important to people to know. So there's a lot of ballots, a busy ballot, and you know what, we've been building to this point, and we're finally here.
Okay, Tania, did you have some questions that you want to talk to Dr. Samuels about?
Sure, put me on the spot, Christy.
That's what friends are for.
Let me check. I had some things written down. Maybe Donna can go first, and then I can come back with my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Donna?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Dr. Samuels. Yeah, there's been some talk about overhauling the electoral system. So I would like to hear you share a little bit about that, like, some of the pros and cons of our current electoral system.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. In fact, that it's funny you asked that question, because in my constitutional law class on yesterday, we were talking about the case 20 years ago of Bush versus Gore. When we had the recount issue in Florida, and Al Gore had 500,000 more votes nationally than George W. Bush, but he lost the election. And we saw the same thing happen in 2016. Now, this is kind of a rare thing. So this whole Electoral College thing is something that exists in no other democracy. Democracy, that in itself creates some interesting challenges. I'm of the view that the Electoral College has long outlived its usefulness, if it was ever useful. There's some historical reasons why we have it. Why it exists is mainly was a compromise of the Constitutional Convention. But that's kind of academic. It really is unnecessary. Unnecessary. I just think that it'll be a whole lot simpler if simply the person who gets the most votes win. That's how every other election in America works. But be that as it may, the system we have now is one in which what matters is we have a system which is a series of about 50 local state elections plus the District of Columbia. And so the important thing is that, can you get the majority of the votes in enough states with enough electoral votes to get a majority in the Electoral College? Each state gets a certain number of electoral votes based upon the size of their congressional delegation. So in case of Louisiana, we have 8 electoral votes because we have 6 congressional districts plus our 2 United States senators. And in most states, electoral votes are won on a winner-take-all basis. So it doesn't matter whether you want to stay by 1 vote or a million votes. You get all electoral votes. There are 2 states, I think Nebraska is one, I think New Hampshire may be the other one, where it's by congressional district. So the bottom line is that you want to get in the Electoral College, a majority is 270, and so the first candidate that can get to 270 basically wins. So it makes our election system a little bit more complicated. I think a little more complicated than it needs to be. But right now, that's the system that we have.
It was a very interesting thing, particularly with the last election with Hillary Clinton, winning the majority of the votes. And then we have the Electoral College system that we are utilizing. How do you foresee that may play or be an issue in this particular election?
That could be, theoretically, it could be an issue. If the polls are right, this election I don't believe is as close. Now that can only be an issue if the election is close. But there are a lot of reasons to believe that the 2020 election is very different from the 2016 election. So I actually don't anticipate this election being nearly as close as some of the prognosticators were hoping to be. Now, obviously, we're going to find out in very shortly, if I'm right or if I'm wrong about this. But I think that in 2016, people underestimated Trump's strength. I think because of the mistakes that a lot of people made last time, and most people didn't think he was going to win this time. I think the media and pundits have overcompensated for that, and nobody wants to be wrong again. And so, but I think this time, people are overestimating his strength. So I honestly don't believe this is going to be as close as people think it is. Now, again, we'll find out in very shortly if I'm right or not. So, but we'll see.
So, Dr. Samuel, I have a question about how do we message and encourage people to be engaged and get out and vote in a presidential election if we can agree that Louisiana has 8 electoral votes and it's a winner take all. Louisiana has historically cast those 8 votes on the Republican side. So how do you motivate someone who understands that process and takes the stance, well, my vote really doesn't matter because historically, this is where our electoral votes have been cast in the past?
Okay, excellent question, James. And I think the answer to that is that I tell people Louisiana is not a red state. Louisiana is a non-voting state. Okay, if you look at total turnout in a lot of these races in Louisiana, we have lots of Louisianians who are sitting on the sidelines.
That's good.
And so that's something I would say. Louisiana is not a red state. Republicans have been winning, but if you actually look at the turnout in recent elections in the state, for example, in 2015, when John Edwards won the first time, in the runoff, the turnout was 40%. And it was a little better this time, about 51, 52%, turnout. But that's the statewide election. and obviously it's a little better in the presidential election. But then there are lots of people who just aren't voting. So Republicans are winning, and largely not necessarily because there's this consensus about their policies. They're winning because a lot of people are not bothering to vote.
Gotcha. That's a good explanation. My second question to you is, what is this national election and the local election? We talked about having a mayor that's on the ballot, all city councils, but from a criminal justice standpoint, what do you think this election means for criminal justice? How do you perceive where we are or where we've been the last 4 years to where we potentially need to be, or things that we need to do different as it relates to criminal justice? What does these elections mean to you from a criminal justice standpoint?
Actually, from a criminal justice standpoint, actually most law enforcement is state and local. You know, state and local. So, for example, we had this conversation in 2016 with some students. Actually, I got into a pitch argument with a group of students, because, I was kind of the advisor of the group. And one of the students, who was very sure of herself, was discussed with both candidates, and said it doesn't really matter who wins, and voting has really helped us out. And I usually don't interfere, but when she started saying that, and I had to inject myself into the conversation, and and we went back and forth. And one of the things I tried to explain to them and said, look, you're sitting here telling me that you rah by Black Lives Matter, and then you're gonna tell people that you don't want to vote. And I'm like, I said, this was in 2016. Remember, 2016 was right. This was right after Alton Sterling and all of the protests in the city, and then the police officers get shot. I said, you realize that the mayor is going to appoint the new police chief? So there were a lot of concerns about law enforcement and how the Baton Rouge police had handled the situation, what the leadership of the Baton Rouge police had been, the culture that they had created. I said, well, one way you can do something about this is have the mayor is going to appoint the police chief. They're going to appoint the police chief. You know what? Juries. Juries. One of the ways we can protect our communities is actually doing something that people don't like to do, and that's being on juries. How do they determine who's going to be in the jury pool? Well, they start with who's the registered voters. Who's the voter? So all those, yes, a lot of those things matter. At the state level, the governor appoints the state, the superintendent of state police. State police. So people be reminded that in terms of law enforcement, most law enforcement is actually state and local.
And I agree. So I have one more question, and I was trying to buy Sister Williams some time, so she said she needed to get her questions together. So it's been some
time. So I'm gonna get some doozies from her. Then I expect.
So this is my last question. So I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and we were talking, and he didn't vote, and I was trying to encourage him to go vote today, and I was unsuccessful in doing that. But one of the things that he stood strong to was the fact that we have somebody that's running, that's trying to garner the African American vote, that's been in politics for over 40 years on one side, and has done some damage with some of his policies and legislations over the years, particularly to the African American community. And on the other side, we have somebody who we know is strong to cater to his base, which seems to be rich people that necessarily don't look like me and you. So he kind of felt like he was between a rock and a hard place. And I wasn't successful in selling him on my ideology, but what would be your message to somebody that feels that we're stuck in the middle and we look on either side.
Two things. Two things. First of all, we will always have imperfect choices. You know, that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that you have to investigate some of these claims that people are making, because oftentimes, oftentimes, oftentimes the well, they're all just the same. It's the same. It's kind of superficial, but it's also, quite frankly, sometimes that's actually an excuse for people not to take responsibility for investigating for themselves rather than simply repeating what people are saying. What people are saying. So let's talk about the crime bill, for example. This is one of the things that people have been trying to hold against Joe Biden. Joe Biden. And keep in mind, first of all, Joe Biden has actually admitted that there were some things about the crime bill that were a mistake. They were a mistake. If you've been in public life for 48 years, there are lots of votes you have taken. There are lots of things that if you had to do them over again, you might have made different decisions. Different decisions. I mean, that's the way it is in life, and that's the way it is in politics. In politics. So that's the first thing. In 1994, a lot of people voted for the crime bill. A lot of people for the crime bill. It wasn't just Joe Biden that was for the crime bill. You had black communities crying for the crime bill. In 1994, we were right in the middle of a crack epidemic. So there was a lot of people pushing for something to be done about the crime, about crime. So there's a lot of people who also got to be responsible for that as well. Number one, but number two, but the more important thing is that it is a myth. It is a myth that the crime bill is what brought about mass incarceration. That is false. Mass incarceration actually began and started in the 1960s, 1970s. The moves or the exacerbation of the acceleration of that. And then it was accelerated, and then the war on drugs in the 1980s under Reagan accelerated that. But also keep in mind, most law enforcement still is state and local. Now, the federal government did play a role in terms of incentivizing. They incentivize drug enforcement, by giving grants to state and local governments, to do things like this. But most of it is state and local. So by the 1990s, mass incarceration was already in existence. So this idea that it was the crime bill that caused mass incarceration, that just simply isn't true. So it's actually a little more complicated than that. So there were things in actually there were lots of things in the crime bill that really more reflected things that were already happening in the states that were applied to the federal system. But keep in mind, the federal system only incarcerates a small percentage of prisoners. Most prisoners are in state and local jails. Now, yeah, now I'm not saying that the crime bill didn't have any negative effects. I mean, it did incentivize the building of more prisons, and that's true. But so it's not actually so it's actually more complicated. But now, however, there actually were some good things in the crime bill too. By the way, the crime bill there was also a ban on assault weapons. Uh, uh, that that uh, that by the way, the Bush administration and the Republican Congress to 10 years later allow that to expire. And so when you think about a lot of mass shootings that are happening today, you know what? One of the reasons that those things are happening is because they allow the assault weapons ban, to expire, and all the bans on the number of rounds you can have, and so that made it easier for, say, the guy who shot the school in Florida, to get access to those kind of weapons. So that's you know, so the salt man was also part of that. There was a domestic violence component in there. There's also part of the crime bill, and actually there is a provision in the crime bill that allows allows the federal government to investigate patterns and practices in local law enforcement, with something that the Obama administration began to use against some of these departments that had a histories of bad relationships with their communities. Something which the Trump administration began to roll back as soon as they got in office. So the crime is. I said all to say that the legacy of the crime bill is a lot more complicated than that. But this is what happens. But people have to take responsibility to find out for themselves and not just simply repeat what other people are saying.
Well, I appreciate that, Dr. Perry.
I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Samuel's November 4th.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're here. It's November 3rd. You know, I was just looking. One of the things I want to talk about too is the Supreme Court. You know, a lot of the conversation has been about packing the courts. I was just looking yesterday. I don't know if many people know we just had a ruling at the Supreme Court that was in relationship to Baton Rouge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have another ruling that is going before the Supreme Court on tomorrow as it relates to same-sex marriages and adoption from Christian or religious, I should say religious institutions. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, where do we go from here? So if you can talk, I know I put a lot into that question. If you can kind of share a little bit about what that means when they're talking about packing the courts, and talk a little bit about, you know, the importance of that particular office going forward.
Yeah. That's a good question. The issue of the courts really drives home the idea that elections have consequences, and because Donald Trump won the election in 2016, and also the fact that Republicans were able to control the United States Senate, they have been able to basically fill 3 seats on the Supreme Court. Now, people need to understand the problem is not just the Supreme Court. The problem is also the lower courts as well. They have approved over 200 federal judges at the district and federal levels. Keep in mind, these are lifetime appointees. Some of these people they appoint, they're in their 30s. 30. They're going to be there a very long time.
Wow.
And that's what's important about that is that most cases won't get to Supreme Court. Supreme Court's only going to hear about 1% of cases every year. So that also matters. That matters a great deal. And so, first of all, so when we talk about this idea of packing the court, you got Republicans now saying that Biden and the Democrats are going to pack the court. When first of all, that's actually what they've been doing. First of all, that's the first thing we understand. That's what they've been doing. Now, the Constitution actually doesn't specify the size of the Supreme Court. A lot of people are not aware of that. Now,
Absolutely.
Actually Congress Congress can set the size of the court, and so the size of the court has actually changed several times in American history. Now, the last time it hasn't changed. It's been 9 members since 1869, but there's nothing set in stone about the number having to be 9. So theoretically, Congress could change that, and given the hypocrisy, duplicity of the Republicans, when in 2016, in 2016, when Antonin Scalia died, almost 9 months before an election, they refused to even give a hearing to President Obama's nominee, saying, "Oh, they made up a standard and said, oh, we can't do this in election year." But then when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, some of the exact same people who said this said, "We're going to fill that seat." So so the Republicans have have no credibility to tell Democrats how they ought to do. So I say all that to say is that I think that there are a number of reasons why I think Democrats should expand the size of the court. And it's not just retaliation for not just retaliation for what the Republicans did. The Republicans did in a lot of ways. Number one, but keep in mind here's what you understand what the Republicans' long game is. The conservatives for a long time have viewed the courts as a backstop, as a hedge against democracy. In other words, we can, even if we lose on these other issues, we can tie up these progressive legislation by all kind of legal challenges. And the conservatives, they have a lot of well-funded legal foundations and groups. You know what? So think, for example, the Affordable Care Act. I mean, the ink wasn't even dry on the legislation before they had filed lawsuits trying to challenge it. I mean, literally next week, the Supreme Court will be hearing a challenge to the Affordable Care Act, an attempt to throw out the Affordable Care Act in the middle of a pandemic. That's the reason why they were rushing to get Amy Coney Barrett on the court, because she had already written a law review article a few years ago criticizing Chief Justice John Roberts, who was a conservative appointee, for siding with the liberals in upholding the Affordable Care Act. So they put her on the court with the idea that she would be a sure vote to overturn it. And my point is that this is what Republicans are planning to do. What they're planning to do is they did the same thing to President Obama. When he was president, they used the Senate when they were in the minority to filibuster. So even though they were in the minority, they were to stop a lot of stuff, ball up a lot of things he was trying to do, and it want to do the same thing with the court. So even if we lose the presidency, even if we lose the Senate, even if we lose the House, we're going to go to the courts and try to invalidate legislation that the Democrats try to pass. And so I think that and I think it's important for Democrats, you need to understand what the Republicans' game is. That's what their long game is. See, Democrats tend to think in narrow 2, 3, and 4 year election cycles. Republicans think in terms of 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And so I think that's one reason you need to expand the court. They also need to expand the court because the Republicans have placed so many judges at the lower levels. That means there's going to be a whole lot of bad decisions going to be made down to lower levels. And so for no other reason than the fact that that when some of those decisions are made, you actually need somewhere to appeal those decisions to. So, for example, in Florida, the voters in Florida in 2018 passed a constitutional amendment to the state constitution to say that all people who were ex-felons, we're gonna restore their voting rights. It passed overwhelmingly. Okay. However, the Florida legislature, which is dominated by Republicans, came right behind that the next year and then passed a law to say, for you ex-felons, you got to pay your fines and fees first. Which sounds like a poll tax to me. And so oftentimes, that's still a big issue for people who oftentimes who are still incarcerated, formerly incarcerated. And if you don't pay them, you can go back in jail. You can go back in jail. And so, my point is that was challenged in the courts, and because of the conservative courts, because of all the conservative appointments on the courts, they upheld that. So my point is that you're going to continue there will continually be decisions like this. When Democrats win, progressives win, they will pass laws. Republicans, in places where Republicans still have power, they will then try to use the courts or pass laws, and then use the courts to invalidate or nullify progressive legislation. So I think the Democrats need to expand the court, if for no other reason, to at least allow you somewhere you can appeal some of these very bad decisions, because they are going to happen, because you can't unappoint these judges that they've already appointed. I don't know. I thought that was a long answer, but
no. Donna, Tania, James,
she's had a long time.
I promise.
She's gonna get me now.
I promise Dr. Samuels will do 30 minutes. And so do y'all have anything y'all want to add? I mean, we can ask questions all night. Do y'all have anything you all want to add?
No, I don't. Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuels, for that insight. I am so excited. I called Dr. Samuels and it was no problems. Every time we've called him, he's answered, and he was right there. We have a question, I think, from the audience. Someone asked, what about getting Dr. Samuels, some of the current felons, to the polls?
About getting them to the polls?
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, there are groups that are working on that. There are a lot of community groups that actually are working on that very thing and advocating for that. So this is this has been a major source of activism in doing this. By the way, I want to make sure just for the record, people know that the amendment to the Constitution, the Louisiana State Constitution, that got rid of the non-unanimous verdicts, that a lot of that the movement. There was some stories in the paper about that, but what they didn't say is that movement started at the Southern University Law Center. And the other folks picked it up later, but it was actually the Southern University Law Center where a lot of the agitation about that was imposed. I mean, and really, one of the sheroes of that movement is Professor Angela Allen, the Law Center, who have been writing about this issue for a number of years, and she pulled together a symposium, and that's actually what started the groundswell of the movement toward that, and it got more attention later as other folks got on the bandwagon, but in terms of getting our history right, that started at Southern University.
We might, Donna, have to get with Attorney Allen and see if we can get her on and talk about that a little more in depth. Thank you for that, Dr. Samuels. We can reach out to her and see if she want to join in and talk about that. Yes.
She's excellent.
Okay, good. Okay, you all, look, we have so much planned for you. I actually have a couple of people over here. We're having a watch party with a lot of our team members. They're here eating up all the food. We're about to go to the streets, to the polling booths, talk to a couple of people. At 7:00, we will have our students joining in. James and Tania are going to be talking to them at 7:00, and they are excited about voting. They had a wonderful panel on Thursday of last week. And so they were very, very excited and knowledgeable. I'm telling you, these are some smart young people. So let's continue to watch Party. So join back in as we give some more information. And we are going to be here until 9 o'clock tonight. So join us at the 7 o'clock hour with our college students.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Samuel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.